It was raining pretty hard when we landed at Dublin Airport at 6:30 in the morning. But we were prepared for just about any kind of weather Ireland could throw at us in early May. We'd planned this trip for nearly a year, and we weren't about to let weather get in the way of our Ireland motorcycle adventure. Kevin is up ahead riding lead. He rode down from his home in Derry, Northern Ireland to ride with us for 4 days. I met Kevin on my Arctic trip last year. He's also going to help us ride safe and make sure we stay on the left side of the road.
First Irish riding bike on a motorbike.
Yeah, when we came through here, we thought, all right, which direction do we look?
Hello? Yeah, that's always look to the right.
After leaving Celtic Rider, where Sean and I rented our motorcycles, the three of us headed towards Trim Castle. In less than an hour, we are arriving at our first castle of the trip.
That's pretty cool. I've never seen that before.
We decided we better move to the parking lot down the street since we were parked in a bus stop. Now, when Sean and I reserved these rental bikes several months earlier, we asked for the largest and widest panniers, or saddlebags in layman's terms, that they could possibly mount on the bikes for us, in order to hold all the gear that we had brought with us. Paul, the owner of Celtic Rider, was a bit reluctant to do so as he knows the problems these massive panniers can cause a rider. I assured Paul we'd be very careful and that I was accustomed to riding with panniers on my bike at home, which are 37 liters each. The behemoths on this bike are 46 liters each, giving the bike a wingspan of over 4 feet.
I think,
It's full?
no, when you're on a motorcycle, it's never full. I think we can park up here.
Okay.
Just watch those panniers. Maybe got those big white panniers on there.
Right.
Well, there was a warning from Kevin. And how could I possibly forget what Paul said?
Okay, gentlemen, remember the bike's got a fat ass now. Give yourself plenty of space, okay?
Well, crap. Sorry about that, Paul.
Yeah, those panniers are away.
Now that don't damage the rental bike on my things to worry about list is out of the way so nice and early on this trip, I can focus on being a tourist. At almost 323,000 square feet, Trim Castle is the largest Norman castle in Ireland. It was built by Hugh de Lacy and his son Walter in the 1170s through the year 1205.
All right, Terry, turn right.
The light rain continued to come down as we left Trim Castle. Then we headed to our next destination, Roche Castle. The main objective on this trip, other than simply enjoying the beauty of Ireland, is to completely circle the island on the motorcycles and visit as many castles on our list that we compiled and researched for months prior to leaving for Ireland. Up ahead, on the left, you'll get a couple of glimpses of Roche Castle. In order to get to the castle, we had to open one of these livestock gates we're riding by and walk through what appeared to be, in my mind, someone's private pasture land. Now, on the other side of one of these gates, where we parked our bikes, stood this guy. He looked like he was just daring us to enter his domain. As we walked through the pasture, approaching the castle, I found myself watching out for a charging bull. But all was clear and we enjoyed exploring the castle that we had all to ourselves that afternoon. Roche Castle is a Norman castle built by Bertram de Verdun in 1236. A secret passage once connected the castle to a round tower outpost. As Kevin and I explored the interior of the castle, we came across this opening at the base of one of the castle walls. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the entrance to that secret passage. made our way further north, crossing into Northern Ireland towards the town of Portaferry. The adventure bikes that we're riding are significantly taller than a standard street-type motorcycle, making it somewhat difficult for a person with a short inseam to climb onto.
Picture over here?
Yeah. Oh, I'm in there all right. Just look at the little gap between Kevin's helmet and Sean's helmet. After a calm and peaceful ride on the ferry, Sean and I were starting to feel the effects of not having any sleep for the past 36 hours and no food for the past 13 hours. So we checked into the Portaferry Hotel. Kevin rode north to Cumber, near Belfast, to stay the night with his sister. We would meet back up with Kevin at our next destination, Grey Abbey, tomorrow morning, since it was relatively close to his sister's home. So we ended our first day in Ireland with a fresh pint of Guinness and a good meat pie. When I woke up this morning, it was somewhat of a pleasant shock the moment I realized I wasn't in Colorado, but in a village in Northern Ireland. I overheard some locals in the pub last night mention that the rain was supposed to clear out today, but when I opened the curtain in my room and looked out the window, the rain was coming down in buckets. But by the time Sean and I finished our breakfast, we had what the locals call the Ulster fry, the rain had let up quite a bit. When we went outside to begin loading our bikes, we were surprised to see Kevin waiting for us. He rode down from Cumber in the pouring rain this morning so that we wouldn't have to ride to Grey Abbey on our own. You've probably noticed by now that we've been riding and parking our motorcycles on the walkways and sidewalks. Even though Sean and I were a little uneasy doing so, Kevin assured us that it's perfectly acceptable here in Ireland, but more on that later. It was only about a 30-minute ride from Portaferry to Grey Abbey. We chose to add a few abbeys to our list of sights to see because the ancient architecture is just as dramatic as the castles are, and Grey Abbey was no disappointment. Grey Abbey dates back to 1193. It was founded by the wife of John de Courcy, the Anglo-Norman conqueror of the province of Ulster. It was the first fully Gothic-style building in Ulster, in which every window and door arch is pointed rather than rounded. We continued north en route to our next destination, Dunluce Castle, about 100 miles from Grianan. As we were riding through Belfast, Kevin suggested that we stop and see the House of Parliament, better known as the House on the Hill. It was somewhere in this area that Sean noticed my left pannier was dangling from the bike due to my collision with him yesterday. We pulled over and spent about 20 minutes trying to patch it back up. Good thing Kevin brought a supply of zip ties along with him. Kevin pointed out that just to our right, where the yellow cranes are, is the shipyard where the Titanic was built. Not long after passing through Belfast, we found ourselves on what they call the Coast Road, with the scenic Irish coast on our left and the beautiful Irish Sea on our right. We pulled over for a quick break, which gave me an opportunity to look towards the London area and wave at all of my relatives there, as I promised my cousin Kevin I would. The further north we went, the more motorcycles we saw. This was due to the Northwest 200 motorcycle race starting this week. About 5 hours after leaving Grey Abbey, we were closing in on Dunluce Castle. Dunluce Castle is by far the most dramatic castle we visited on this trip, sitting high on the edge of a cliff overlooking the North Atlantic Ocean. It was built in the 1200s and documented to be in the hands of the McQuillan family in 1513. A local legend states that the kitchen collapsed into the sea one night during a dinner party, killing all but one of the kitchen staff. The wife of the owner at that time refused to live in the castle any longer. Kevin was a little disappointed that the castle interior was closed for the day when we arrived at 5 o'clock. That's Kevin trying to get a peek over the wall. So, before we left Dunluce Castle, Kevin suggested that we take a little tour of the walking path in front of the castle entrance. But on the motorcycles. We're now riding through the town of Portrush, one of 3 towns the Northwest 200 motorcycle race runs through. It's considered the largest annual sporting event in Ireland, attracting over 150,000 visitors each year. It's also one of the fastest motorcycle races in the world, with speeds in excess of 200 miles per hour on the very streets we're riding on now. Not far from Portrush, we stopped for a quick break at Downhill House. It was built in the late 1700s for Frederick IV, Earl of Bristol. Much of it was destroyed by a fire in 1851. It was rebuilt in 1871 but fell into disrepair during the Second World War. We arrived at Kevin's home near Derry late in the evening, where we were treated to the warm Irish hospitality of his wife Kathleen and their 2 sons Cahir, Oshie, and an excellent homemade shepherd's pie. Sometime after midnight, Kevin escorted us to our hotel, where we called it a night and an excellent day of riding in Ireland. Today, our travels would take us on a guided tour through Derry, as this is where Kevin was born and raised, then north toward Port Salon, and then south to Boran on the Atlantic coast, where Kevin had a surprise for us. Kevin started our tour of Derry by passing through several of the gates of this walled city. It's the only remaining intact walled city in Ireland. The walls were built between 1613 and 1619. Derry is also one of the oldest continuously inhabited places in Ireland. The earliest historical references date to the 6th century when a monastery was founded there. He then took us to the Bogside area, site of Bloody Sunday.
Those panniers now. Don't forget about the panniers, right? This is a one-way street.
We then made our way back up the hill to see a little more of the city wall and downtown Derry.
Like those panniers passing that bus. Just watch that pillar down here. We got panniers.
Okay. If you hear a clunk,
no, we're not going to hear no clunk.
Now, for obvious reasons, I've developed a reputation with Kevin for running into things with my panniers, with good reason. One such incident happened when Kevin and I were in Alaska last year, when I ran into the pannier on Jim's Harley. But I'm confident all pannier disasters are a thing of the past. As we were leaving Derry, we rode by the lingerie shop one of Kevin's sisters owns. That's it on the right. And then we passed by the cathedral where Kevin and Kathleen were married. Then we were off to our next destination. Less than 40 minutes outside of Derry is Grianan of a Leach, or Grianan Fort, sitting high on Grianan Hill. It's a ring fort thought to have been built in the 6th or 7th century. It was the seat of the Kingdom of Alich and one of the royal sites of Gaelic Ireland. The fort was destroyed by the King of Munster in 1101, but then reconstructed in the 1870s. Just outside the fort wall are the remains of a tumulus, a mound of earth and stone raised over grave or burial mound, which is believed to date back to the Neolithic Age, which is around 10,000 to 2000 BC. We stopped at the Port Salon Beach overlook so Kevin could check on the plaque he mounted in honor of his sister who passed away. And it really was an incredible view. Later that day, we arrived at the Great Northern Hotel, which was Kevin and Kathleen's surprise to me and Sean. They paid for our rooms in this 4-star hotel which sits on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Once again, more evidence of Kevin and Kathleen's generous hospitality. After loading our bikes this morning, we rode around the back of the hotel to take a few pictures. Today, our motorcycles would take us from Boran east to Monea Castle, then to Enniskillen, then back west near the Atlantic coast to Sligo.
That's a horse, not a donkey.
Well, one man's donkey is another man's horse.
Yeah.
Monea Castle was built in 1616. Its design is Scots-influenced with its corbels and crow-stepped gables on both towers. It was built for the rector of Devonish, Malcolm Hamilton, who was promoted to Archbishop of Cashel in 1623. During the Irish Rebellion of 1641, Monea was attacked by Rory Maguire. Several people were killed during that battle. In the mid-1700s, Monea was gutted by fire and has been abandoned ever since. After a short ride from Monea Castle, we were in the town of Enniskillen, where Sean and I were able to practice more of our motorcycle sidewalk riding skills. We stopped at Enniskillen Castle and Museum and went on the self-guided tour. Kevin's grandfather was stationed here during World War II. Shortly after our tour, it was time for Kevin to break away from our Irish motorcycle trip and head back home so we could return to work.
Great to get to spend a bit of time with you.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
I did too.
And, we'll do it again.
Okay, sounds
Maybe
good.
some other continent, but we'll do it again.
Exactly.
All right, guys.
See you, Kevin. Bye. Drive safe.
We were going to miss Kevin's quick-witted humor, his perfect renditions of Willie Nelson's On the Road Again, and the secure feeling we had as he guided us through the streets of Ireland. A couple hours after leaving Enniskillen, we arrived in the town of Sligo near the west coast, where we unknowingly booked rooms in one of the biggest hotels in the city and completed another day of our tour of Ireland. When we checked into our hotel in Sligo, we asked if they could put us in rooms as close to the lobby's front door as they possibly could, where our bikes were parked, so that we could easily haul all of our gear back and forth. What we asked for and what we got are two different things. While we were loading our bikes for today's ride, we met a young Irish family interested in the two Americans who were touring their country on motorcycles. Then we were on the road again. Today, Sean and I are riding from Sligo into Cong, then further south, stopping in Headford for the night. After missing a couple of turns, we pulled over to the side of the road to get our bearings, and we were immediately greeted by this man who was very anxious to help us out with directions.
You go back here to the crossroads, turn left, through the village.
Okay.
First right.
First right after the village.
Yeah, that's him there.
Okay.
How are you?
He was trying to get his friend to let us onto the castle grounds for free.
Okay, I take it you're not on the gate, so? Oh, you're on the bridge? No, it's just two lads have pulled up here beside me, lost, looking for on motorbikes. They're heading for Cong. He's not on the gate, he's on the bridge.
It's on the bridge.
Which is right in front of the castle.
Okay.
Okay, but there is another way. You see, when you arrive up to the gate, they charge you £5 a head to drive through.
Okay.
To go through the grounds. But if you want to go through it, so it's your call now if you want to go through it or not. There is another way around.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah. I'm there. Yeah.
Cong is the classic Irish village. It's also where The Quiet Man, starring John Wayne, was filmed. In the early 7th century, a church was built on the site where the current Cong Abbey sits. After a fire and several attacks over the years, Cong Abbey was rebuilt once again in the 1200s. It has been praised for some of the finest examples of early Gothic architecture. There's a little mystery behind the story of our next destination, Baline Castle, which is only about 2 or 3 miles from Cong. Several months ago, while Sean and I were researching which Irish castles we wanted to visit, we came across a photograph of Baline Castle, hidden in a dark, enchanting-looking forest. But we were never able to find its exact location, or any directions on how to get there on any of the maps or even on the internet. So, after leaving Cong, we began our quest to find Baline Castle.
Okay. No. Yeah. Oh, that's that house. That's the house.
I was referring to a house that we saw on Google Satellite View that we thought might be near the trail to Baline.
I'm not sure. Half a mile to Clonbur.
If we reach Clonbur, then we've gone too far because we know Baline is between Cong and Clonbur. I think we spent about an hour riding up and down this road looking for the trail to Baline.
Okay, all right.
This appeared to be the trail to Baline Castle.
This has got to be it.
Since it's closed to all motorized vehicles, we loaded all of our camera gear and started walking. We had no idea how far it was, and we still weren't 100% sure that this was the right trail. We came to a fork in the trail and went left, only to end up in a logging area about 20 minutes later and had to turn around and come back and take the trail to the right. We'd been walking for about 45 minutes and started to wonder if we were even on the right trail. Then we noticed the forest started taking on that dark, eerie, enchanted look, fitting for a place known as Ireland's spookiest castle. Then off to our left and through the trees, there it was.
No entry. It's locked.
We went all this way and we can't get in. This brand new fence completely surrounded the whole castle. We had traveled over 4,000 miles and this was the one castle we really wanted to see. Once again, being the guy who doesn't like to break the rules, I started thinking, what would Kevin do? That's Kevin trying to get a peek over the wall. So, I climbed over the fence. Baline Castle, although small, was still amazing to see, but I did catch myself looking up quite a bit for any loose stones that might come tumbling down on my head. The castle was built in the late 1200s and was acquired by the powerful Burke clan in the 14th or 15th century. It was a 2-story structure with no door on the ground floor. The tower was originally 4 stories tall. A fire destroyed the interior in the late 15th century. With Baline Castle checked off our list, we began the long walk back down the trail, which we discovered later to be the Cong Nature Trail, which we also discovered later begins back at Cong Abbey, where we started this whole journey today. When we approached the area where we parked our bikes, we noticed that the gate was open, and Sean's motorcycle, which had been parked in front of the gate, had been dragged next to my bike, all 600 pounds of it. When the driver of the logging truck came back through the gate, he was not very pleased with us. While en route to Galway, which is where we planned on spending the night, we kept missing a turn and we had to keep circling back. As I was looking down at my GPS to verify exactly where to turn, Sean stopped in the middle of the road because a bus was pulling out in front of him. When I looked up, it was too late. I crashed right into him, damaging the left pannier once again. We spent nearly an hour repairing it and decided to skip Galway. We'd had enough excitement for one day and checked into a nice little hotel in Headford. Today we're riding from Headford to the Cliffs of Moher, through the Gap of Dunloe, and then we would end our day in Killarney. I had no idea that today I was going to see some of the most beautiful scenery in my life. Most of the castles built in Ireland were built by the Normans, but the Irish built their own version of castles called the Tower House. This is McKinnish Tower House, built in the 1400s. Next stop was the Cliffs of Moher. just in time to catch the ferry across the Shannon River, which saved us about 2 hours of riding time. The Gap of Dunloe, or in American terms, Dunloe Pass, looked like a scene right out of a fantasy movie. over the pass and down into the valley below, we realized that the quickest route to the town we were staying in tonight was to turn around and go back through the Gap of Dunloe, which we didn't mind doing at all. We only had to ride about 5 minutes from our hotel in Killarney to see the next castle on our list, Roche Castle. Roche Castle was built in the late 1400s by the O'Donoghue clan. It was later surrendered to the English military leader Oliver Cromwell. More on Cromwell during tomorrow's ride. Today's ride, we would be going from Killarney to the Rock of Cashel and then on to the village of Thurles. Later in the afternoon, we arrived in the village of Cashel, home to one of the most impressive-looking castles in Ireland. A large portion of Cashel Castle, better known as the Rock of Cashel, was covered in scaffolding for repairs, and the grounds were covered in tourists, so we chose to settle for a view from a distance. The Rock of Cashel was the traditional seat of the kings of Munster for several hundred years prior to the Norman invasion. The oldest and tallest of the buildings is the Round Tower, built in the early 1100s. The other structures were built later in the 12th and 13th centuries. The rector of Devonish, Malcolm Hamilton, who built and lived in Monea Castle, which we visited on day 4 of our trip, became Archbishop of Cashel. He's buried in the graveyard next to the castle.
Look!
While we were photographing Cashel, we noticed some old structures down the hill past Cashel. We decided to go investigate.
We gotta go see that.
What we found was Hoare Abbey. It was an incredible place. Hoare Abbey was founded in 1266. In 1269, the Archbishop at that time banished the Benedictines after he had a dream that they were plotting to murder him. On this last day of our Ireland motorcycle adventure, we'll be riding from Thurles to Dunamase Castle, then on to Celtic Rider near Dublin to return our motorcycles. On our way to Dunamase Castle, Sean noticed some ruins off to the right. We decided to turn off the road and check it out. Colahill Castle was built in 1425 and survived many attacks by its enemies until finally falling in 1657 to Oliver Cromwell after destroying it with relentless cannon fire. It wasn't long before we arrived at our final castle of the trip, Dunamase Castle, also known as the Rock of Dunamase. Dunamase was one of the best defensively designed castles in Ireland. It was built in the late 1100s on the site of a 9th century fort. Dunamase had a drawbridge leading to an outer gate and walled area, which led to a main gate and walled area protecting the Great Hall. Each gatehouse featured inward-facing arrow slots and murder holes, which in some cases, red-hot sand was poured onto the attacking enemy. Dunamase sits high on top of a hill with an amazing view of the surrounding area. It was quite a disappointment to see this trip come to an end, but I'm sure we'll never forget it.
like tasers, pepper spray, stun guns?
I have bear spray.